All right, so silo businesses, standalone products, what does it mean?
Okay.
Pretend that I have no clue and that you're just overwhelming me with an avalanche, no pun intended, of information.
Well, okay, so this one's a little hard to talk about because...
It's kind of a catch-all business. Make micro goals for all of Sean's goals.
Well, the hard time I'm going to have with this is there are specific tangible examples that are too early to talk about.
Right? I know how to talk about this because I think that the thing about silo businesses, and correct me if if I'm making a misunderstanding here, that didn't make any sense, but that's okay, is it's something that splits off easily. Feasibly, it's the sort of thing that we could kind of create and then say,
if it didn't fit the business, you could sell it to an investor.
Yeah, you could sell it off.
Yeah.
And some of our siloed businesses, and these are my favorite ones, are the ones, well, see, I don't know how your definition is going to go, but we have some that are on a partnership model. And when they're on a partnership model, then it's like we're the sort of the idea and the like shaping and then the promotion engine, but we don't actually need to manage it.
Right.
And so actually, in a lot of ways, StoryShop is that way. A lot of ways, like we're shaping it, like you're in there, you got your hands in the clay, but the work and then all the coding and all that stuff, that's all handled by Seth. Like if we need new coders, we need to get a new payment management system, like that's kind of his part of the business. So there's a few models there, but it is like what's a totally separate thing that's related.
Yeah, well, there's a couple, and I think this started with Clark, really, when we had Clark and we needed a way to pay for Clark because all of a sudden we have a full-time developmental editor instead of just a story engineer, right? We hired a story engineer.
I just got Clark's business cards and I said, what title do you want? And he said, story engineer.
Oh, that's fantastic. See? So, we got story engineer and that makes sense. That's great. But how do we pay for it? And then we came up with story jackets, right? So the idea is, okay, well, you can get a developmental edit before, your book is even written, which is a much smarter way to do it. I mean, we're the best customer on those because we use them and they're helpful. They keep you on track on the beats. They give you a clear idea of your story. It's great to have someone outside coming in to, give you this perspective. And that's great because that's something that a lot of our audience can use so we can sell it directly and then that can help fund that position. And we've thought of a lot of different ways that we can do that. We've thought of a lot of different things that we can build. We've thought of a lot of little different tiny little businesses. So how can we build something that is that totally harmonizes with all the other stuff we're doing that is an addition and not a subtraction.
And it has to be a little bit set it and forget it.
Yeah.
Like story jackets do require management. So Clark obviously needs to do them. They need to be, scheduled. There's customer service involved. But other than that, it kind of does its own thing.
But you also could, if you talk about the full scale of that, you could, we'll get to this point where Clark is just too valuable for the things that we're doing, right? And we need his full time. So then we could hire a couple other story experts, right? And then you could just have that story jacket is a standalone business. I mean, the thing is, it's neat. There's no gamble there because we can start that business and sell it as needed. And if there's a huge demand for story jackets, we could scale it out. If not, it can just do what it does and help fund the position. And we could even fold it back after a point. So we get to decide how much. We immediately scaled it in a small way because romance authors raised their hand and said, well, what about me? Because romance
Clark isn't doing that.
Fundamentally different. Yeah, because we strongly feel that romance needs its own thing. And so we had story garters, and Tammy does those because she's the romance person. So it's kind of perfect. But we thought of a lot of different little things like that we can do. And we'll talk more about this when we get to StoryShop. But a lot of it is StoryShop related too, because we've created an engine there. And so we can create StoryShop modules that are also standalone apps. And we've thought of a lot of different ways to do that.
And also just apps that are standalone. I mean, we have to be a little bit cagey about this because we aren't ready to, two things. Number one, we don't want to announce things prematurely. But second, we have a history of saying, we're going to do this, and then it takes forever. And people say, weren't you going to do that? And oh, sorry. Because things change quickly. But some of the ones that I'm thinking are neat little partnership modules where it's like this person will be in charge of this and will be handling it, and then we just kind of, we manage it. But then there's also the software pieces where Seth kind of opened Pandora's box. We've talked about this a little bit with StoryShop and reinvented the way he was going to do it. And then because of that, he said, oh, look at this new skill set that I have.
Right.
And so I can create this little thing, and then we can sell it. And suddenly we have this thing we can sell, and it requires very little to actually sell a license or a membership or whatever it is.
Yeah, and we've also talked about really expanding the customer experience, the reader experience for all the Smarter Artist books that we do. So like, what component can we add to them? What can make them more special? Is there, an app or a calculator or a webinar or something that we can do that's just special that enhances the learning, from whatever we're going to do? And so some of those can be standalone products, because even if they're part of a book, or an addendum to a book, they can still be enjoyed in a sideways way. And I think that will keep our brains working, because you never know what a little side thing could be. Like, Story Shop is a great example, because it was a little micro business. It was, what if we built an app? Like, that was,
and then it became the world.
Yeah, it became this thing that our business is devoted to Story Shop. Like, there's it touches so many of our goals. Like, how are we going to scale fiction, right? How are we going to even, some of the education things that we're thinking about doing this year are kind of centered around some of the Story Shop stuff. So it's become core to our business. It's a beating heart of part of what we do, and that means that it's exciting. So the idea of these standalone products is that there will be many, and we don't really know when they're going to come up. They just have to serve our business and serve our community. And really, I think that there's no limit to that. And I think that one of the things that I like so much about this is that there are certainly some that are already happening that we can't talk about yet. But there's also the ones that we have no idea. And we've seen, just from a short period of time, how fast those can happen and how quickly we can execute on the ideas given the proper staffing and queue and all that.
And I would say, and maybe this is a good final point for this one, is I also like that it gives you a little bit of a pressure valve and a playground, right?
Yeah.
Because if the business is small enough, not pointing to the thing which we won't mention, which is not little, it can be a micro business, and we already have that built in.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, so as long as we're not developing 5 other micro businesses right now, there's kind of like built-in bandwidth in the company to say, okay, well, let's make this little calculator or whatever it is, this little service. And, it's a few weeks worth of management or whatever it ends up being, and then it's kind of just another thing that we can support.
It's an asset in a portfolio, and we can manage it. So if something is dead after a year, you just pull it. But if something is like, wow, this is kind of taking off, then you devote more resources to it. So yeah, I love this. And you're right. Like, it totally taps into my little 5th grade, like on the playground, like figuring out what's next. Like I love that. And this is good. So that's one of my favorite goals for sure.